and I'll let everybody in. Good. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
I'm seeing some familiar faces now, which is good news. So luckily, we're joined tonight by some amazing artists, and this is our number 5 in our sort of edition for May. I'm just going to switch on my share of my screen so you can kind of see what we're talking about tonight. And we're talking about, let me just click on here. I've still got people trying to come in. Let's let them come in. And tonight we're going to be talking about the fashion figure. So I guess we've had portraits, we've had surviving as a fashion illustrator, we've had drawing live as a fashion illustrator. And I guess one of the biggest areas, obviously, is the actual figure. The people I've selected this evening, I guess for me, I've seen their work for quite a while, and they've all challenged the figure in all different ways. So we have kind of an array of people, from doing live fashion drawing to drawing backstage to doing life drawing to then doing commercial illustration. So there's hopefully a good array of people, and you'll get sort of a little bit of an insight to all of them. I guess the questions I've been asking the illustrators is what's inspired them, what keeps them going, what do they see as challenges as illustrators from doing the figure, like proportion or breaking the rules of proportion. So as an illustrator, there's many things that we try and play with to experiment, some elongating the figure. And the fashion figure has always been challenged by fashion illustration. So it's a really great topic, and we've kind of built up to this. So hopefully tonight will be a good insight for everybody. So tonight we've got Maxim Seergev, we've got Margot Van Huijkelom, we've got Jessica Durrant in Atlanta, which is great. And we've got Connie Lim. Connie, where are you, Connie? We can't hear her now. Let's ask to unmute.
I'm in LA
at the moment. She's got the luxury life of LA and the sun.
Yeah.
And we've got the rain of England.
I can't complain.
Okay. The grass is getting watered, so we're quite happy. So we're gonna go through the different artists, and they're going to spend a bit of time speaking about their practice. A lot of you've probably seen most of these artists because they're quite influential in their different fields. So you've probably seen their work on Instagram. You've probably seen their work as, I guess, in magazines, in books, in many sorts of places. So let's get through it, because I know time will fly. So first of all, we've got Maxim. And Max, I guess this is the first time we've kind of met, and I'd seen his work right at the beginning of when I sort of started doing Fida. And I guess his work, the color palette being so rich. It's great to have another man, because there's not been many men doing fashion illustration. So it's quite good, because most of the people that I'm meeting, or the collective, like when we did the Peter Dundas project, I think it was like 98% female. So it's great to see some male voices here. So I tried to have a mixed medium of people. And I guess what was quite nice is asking Max, what inspired him, what was his influences. And I guess what was really interesting is to see the sort of artists that he selected. So I over to you, Max, and I'd like you to explain your inspiration first, and then kind of come back to your work of how you've used your influences to inform your practice. So let's start with the 2 top drawings that we put in today.
Okay. So first of all, I want to thank you a lot for having me. And I want to tell that in this year, you are my great motivator. because till I got your message in January, maybe I never spoke in English before in the public.
Wow.
So it will be the first time, and yeah.
Amazing, but your English is good, so hopefully we won't have a problem.
Okay, I hope so. Yeah, I can tell you that I always liked some kind of maybe fantasy illustration from my childhood. My parents got a lot of albums of different artists who did art in this style, and yeah, main of them is Frazetta and Boris Vallejo. So yes, it's this style, these colors, which has inspired me really much. And as maybe all of you knows, that I started draw only after my 30.
Yeah.
Yeah, and firstly, I really wanted to be a fantasy illustrator. I wanted to be some kind of concept artist for games. Maybe I wanted to illustrate some novels, sci-fi, fantasy, and something like this. Yeah, and I never thought that one day I will be a fashion illustrator. So yeah.
And I guess just to jump in there is a lot of the companies that I've spoken to, because I spoke to Massimo Nicosia, he was Pringle's creative director and Zenya's, and he said to me a lot of artists who come from Marvel comics, sort of character, not caricatures, but these sort of more illustrative graphic novels, they tend to use them mostly to do their illustrations for their collections. So there is a big connection between the two fields, because you understand figure, proportion, shape, movement, and also expression, I guess expressive figures, because in these they're very sort of erotic as well. So the two you've picked, or the two I selected for your artists, they're very erotic art. You know, and you can see Tom Finland, and you can see artists who probably have been inspired by your artists that you've selected as well, as I guess key figures for fashion illustrators. And you can see the connection. And it was really interesting when I saw these two people that you picked, and I was like, wow, you can really see how some fashion illustrators, famous ones, have really riffed off of these sort of more erotic sort of graphic novel artists. And so it was fascinating to see who you picked, which was great. And obviously Klimt as well. So he kind of moved from this sort of fantastical to the more artisan. And Gustav Klimt, I think most illustrators have been inspired by Klimt or Egon Schiele, and I think the two we see quite a lot.
Yeah, and for example, I can tell that one of artists who really inspired me was Toulouse-Lautrec. Yeah, and for me it's like some kind of symbolism, how you place these pictures, because I started, and I always wanted to be a fantasy illustrator, and these two pictures of Frazetta or Vallejo, it's something that I wanted to do in the beginning. But for me, my next step is Klimt, Schiele. They color scheme, how they construct the bodies in their art. Yeah, so for me, it's I started from realistic drawing, from hyper-realistic drawing, and I became really really stylist illustrator. So now for me, realistic is not so important as it was before.
Which I think is great, because I haven't seen your much earlier work than what I've seen in the last, I guess, 2 to 3 years of what you've been producing. And it would be interesting to see probably some of the earlier pieces, like, you know, if you go back through like Picasso, his journey through the Rose period and how he moved forwards. And if you see the journey of someone like Toulouse-Lautrec, and Toulouse-Lautrec's understanding of composition because of posters and the way he composed the page. And I think that's, so when you look at what you're doing to what you use as inspiration, you can see the sort of amalgamation of Toulouse-Lautrec, Klimt, and then, you know, the sort of graphic novel artists as well, where it's this sort of very animated figure. So I think it's quite nice to have this juxtaposition of all the different artists, and you're sort of gluing them all together. And I think not many people, I wrote an article about you a while ago, and I interviewed you and found out, you know, your background, which was quite fascinating. And I called you the color chemist. And you like, I don't know if you want to explain your original, where you were first.
I started as, my first grade is a technician. I'm a physicist. My second grade is economist, and I never thought that I will be illustrator in one day. No, but when I worked as economist, I bought my first graphic tablet, and after that I started to studying drawing. And it's really cool that you say these beautiful words about my color schemes, because for me it was the biggest problem, because when I started, and I was maybe some kind of digital artist, and there was only one resource in the internet. It was the DeviantArt.com. Yeah, and it was really brilliant or perfect days when some of famous digital artists posted they step by step about their pictures. And my only regrets in my education in art is colors theory, because for this, as now I understand, I want to spend some time.
Well, I guess you think of the Russian constructivists, Kandinsky. You know, you've got such a breadth of people who were sort of the color, I guess, the avant-garde of color. And I think if you think of how Popova and all of these different people, how they used color in this sort of really sort of conflicting, sort of contrasting way, you can see your vivid colors is what I guess is so fascinating. And you can see how you've probably used an RGB gamut of color rather than a CMY. So your colors are really rich. So it shows that you've had a sort of a digital history rather than an analog one, where you see a lot of analog artists, David Hockney, who went from muddy colors and then slowly got richer. So you've done it the opposite way, and you might find that in a few more years, your colors will become more subdued. They might tone down. But at the moment, I think when we look at them in a digital form, they look great, and they're always powerful, and they're always rich. And I think it's quite nice to see, even when I was looking at different contrasts between someone like you and then someone like Connie, and Connie's much more subtle. It's quite interesting to see how different artists look together, and that's what's quite fascinating when I'm looking at all the different work of people putting their images in, and I'm like, how do these two work together? How would they work in a show? you know, all these sorts of things come across my mind. So no, and I think it's been great to see your journey, and also the internet, and how you use Instagram, and how you do your live drawing, and you show this sort of very proactive practice. And I think it's quite nice. So a lot of the artists, like we had Joanna Layla, and we've had many of these artists who've come in, Louise, and we've had people that are quite fresh to the scene, and they almost feel quite young and naive. And I think even Jessica as well, is that they're quite young and they're really ambitious, rather than they've gone through an academic practice. Where if you think someone like myself, I'm now in 25, 30 years of working as a commercial artist. It's a long time and it's very hard to stay motivated. And I think from doing this, it's kept me motivated. And, you know, you'll see me, I'm constantly fighting with my work and how I work. So it's very hard, the journey that I've gone through as well. So, and I know Connie's probably similar to me. We've gone on a very long journey. So anyway, so Max, excellent. We're going to keep going. So I'm going to kind of move to the next, but fantastic. And it's great to hear what you have to say. So next we have Margot, and I guess similar to Max is with Margot, I saw her work right in the beginning, and it was this sort of very dreamy. Well, the first thing I saw is the space that she worked in the garden and outside, and I was like, this is fantastic. It's like watching Monet or someone like that, and I was like crying that I'm in a studio freezing to death, and you're in this beautiful sort of palatial gardens, and I was like, wait a minute, something's not right here. I need to move to Amsterdam and join a new movement. And it looked fantastic. And then I guess these sort of dreamy paintings and images that come out, and this, I guess, obsession with the figure and these sort of elongated necks reminds me of sort of Dior, the early sort of works, even the sort of very sculptural Brancusi. So when seeing your work, I was like, wow, this is quite fascinating to see this sort of artist and how she has her own sort of ways of working. And that, I think that's when I look at all the different people that I see, and people send lots of work and we look at lots of work, and people ask me, oh, you don't like my work or whatever. And it isn't the case. We just look at there's so much out there. It's a case of just extracting different people who have different ways of working. And I thought, for me, seeing your work, yours had the romance of fashion illustration. So when I see it, I feel it's like a romantic journey, and you are part of that journey as well. Like there's a great photograph of you. This sort of almost looks like Franz Klein photograph, and I just think it's almost like a living, breathing person of fashion illustration. So hopefully I've done you a bit of justice by your beautiful world. But what I'd like, I guess, because the images that you've sent in here is this sort of like your little watercolor palettes of what you use and your passion for fashion. I guess talk about them, and then I'd probably like you to talk a bit about maybe how you work, what's your process, you know, your whole array of things, because that's the cryptic bit I'd like to find out more.
Yeah. Well, my work is an ode to the woman and her femininity. She's almost stripped of her environment, and she stays the protagonist of the story. She's the leading character always. And I was very inspired in my life by Utamaro and Japanese wood block print artists from the ukiyo, is like wood, the Japanese name for woodblock prints. And I used to travel a lot in Japan. I worked there, I had a client, and I worked for Vogue in Japan. And he showed me his outstanding collection of woodblock prints in the line and the fragile colors, the lightness of the colors, and how do you say that? La maîtrise du trait. Sometimes I cannot speak English. It's how they use the line that are so delicate and so precise. So I always do research for all kind of techniques. So I like to mix them together. Sometimes I like to use very opaque colors or transparent colors. So what you here now see is really the watercolor part, but sometimes also I like to work with all kind of paints mixed together as a puzzle, because all those years of researching technique made that today I'm really, I'm really feel like I possess it. So I can really play with it now after all those years. So, and here you see like Gonzai Tsambi is left below. These are the Japanese paintings which I bought in Tokyo when I was working there. Wow. And it's really lovely because you can use them very opaque or very transparent. And they are they're like really traditional Japanese watercolor painting, and it has vivid colors and quick dissolution. So you can use it anyways. It's really something it inspires me also. And what inspires me also is like in the shows is when I used to work for the Journal Le Monde, I was going into the backstage. I would sit there with the girls, the models coming in, sitting next to me, and I was like drawing, and they were like coming in with their jeans and their old clothes, and then they would change, and they would like opening their feathers and become women. And that contrast was always so amazing for me to see how a person can change and play with fashion. But fashion for me is just a way to express, but it's the woman that stays the heroine of my story. So fashion can like accentuate emotion, the movement of the body. It's a transparency or something which is like bulky or hairy or aggressive or like leather or whatever kind of material we can have to accentuate the movement in the body. And
and I guess because one of the big things I've been talking and trying to push, and we did an event recently with Alberta Ferretti where we drew live during the show, and I guess once the shows come back, I'm really hungry to get illustrators in them seats drawing live, so it becomes more like an atelier artisan experience of fashion rather than commercialized fashion photographs. Like if you go to a show, it's either celebrities or photographers, and the illustrators are either hidden away or they get a moment, and it loses the craft. You know, we're seeing it in Loewe where Jonathan Anderson's bringing back the craft, but I think it's a real missed opportunity to have illustrators like obviously Richard Haynes or someone like that who's drawing live, but he's one. There should be a whole crew of fashion illustrators capturing all the Chanel, Dior especially. You know, I work for Dior, and you know, they always spoke about, oh, it's so beautiful the way you draw your hand, and they talk about drawing in such a beautiful way. Why is there no fashion illustrators at these shows? And I just can't fathom it, why they're not backstage, why they're not front of house, why half of the space is photographers and illustrators, because they would capture such more of a vibrant attitude to art and creativity, rather than it's just, oh, well, we need the photograph needs to happen now. You know, when Raf Simons is saying it needs to slow down, well, then get the artists in who are slower. Even though the illustrators are quite fast, but you know, the process is a bit more labored over.
We'll come back a little, because I mean, people wanted to identify a lot with photography, but nowadays I think that exactly what you're saying is that we want to get back to the craft and to the expression of something which is different than only a picture. And also when I was starting to work for the Journal Le Monde, it was also because the director, the art buyer, decided to work with me. And it was the first time, maybe since ages, that they've been asking an illustrator to interpret the shows. So it was also, it was kind of risk, because I mean, a photo, or many photographers could send the picture, but as an illustrator, you have to draw, you have to send many different drawings, and then it was coming like full page next morning. So of course, if you have an interruption with internet or something, then you cannot just grab another illustrator. You just are working with that illustrator. So I was really flattered that Journal Le Monde decided to go with me and to do it with me. And I learned a lot from it, because exactly is you have to get the essence of the story, and you can drop what you don't need, and you can just peel off the background, and you have just only the essence of the story. Is that English? L'essence de l'histoire.
It sounds
I'm speaking all languages. I'm speaking Dutch, English, and then French again, and then I don't know how to say it in the language, but yeah. But so yes, I beg everybody, like, please give us more spaces in the journals and the magazines. There are, of course, but I think people need to identify with something which is quite realistic. And so it's a form of art that has to be rediscovered a little, but it does. I feel, I just finished my exhibition in I Love Illustration Gallery in Amsterdam, and I really felt like people are really so interested, and they really love so much to see the paper and the drawings, and I think it's something really romantic, and I feel it's going into the right direction.
And I guess quickly, the images that you have here, so I guess you've got the Valentino one, the green, and you've got your little, like, your signatures there as well, and it reminds me of the Japanese sort of, you created this sort of iconography, which is, quite nice.
A long time ago that I've designed that little logo for my name. I mean, I've been drawing since I was 6, and then I did this one already when I was a kid. And so the Valentino one I did for also the Journal Le Monde. So I had to go on the shows, and then I was like, what, I had to choose the dress I wanted to draw, and that one was so amazing when she walked towards me, and I thought, like, how am I going to draw this while she was walking there? And so you have a real short time to do it. So, and then I cut out a piece of paper, and I took a huge brush with ink on it, and I just put a big stripe on the shablon. How do we say shablon in English? When you cut out the form, you have positive, negative.
Yeah, like a silhouette.
Yeah, so I cut out the skirt, and then I took the paint, and then I had such a clean form for the skirt. I was so happy that it was just one thing. It was not, I just painted in one stripe, and then it dried up, and I was drawing the upper part of the drawing, and then I was putting in the end the flowers on the skirt. So it took a real short time to make that one. And if people ask me how much time does it take to make a drawing, then I say, well, 5 minutes and 55 years, because you don't know, I could draw. I was drawing when I was, as a baby, holding a pen in my hand, and but it takes a life to learn, and I'm still learning. I'm kind of still feeling like a child, and it feels like it keeps me young, because I always I can do this better. I can go on and move on, and every day I feel such an excitement of going again on a new, how to say that, a new trip for new discoveries of how I can treat a subject, how I can draw this new woman coming out of the paper. And
And
happy.
I guess a little bit different is that Hermes one, where well, for me, when I see it, it reminds me of what we call Pantone pens as well, like markers, even though it's quite watercolory.
Yeah.
Where it's worked into has that sort of feeling of the fashion draftsman with the Pantone. When I taught for the Italian schools, we'd be using the Pantone pens.
Yeah, I know.
It has that feeling of that, and it's much more detailed and decorative, and I guess more refined as a piece. But it's a beautiful graphic piece, and I thought, You know, it's fascinating. And just the cropping, the composition and the movement, and you could imagine the narrative leaving the page as well, which is quite nice. And as you said earlier, like the story encapsulates. I think this one really, even the one in the middle, the lady looking at you, she's looking at me all the time. So, you know, that's a perfect sort of Mona Lisa where it follows you around the room sort of look. And I think that was quite fascinating. So the one on the left, the Hermes one, is this done all in watercolors?
Yes, actually I've mixed Gonzai, like the painting you see downstairs.
Yeah.
But I think, no, it's probably 100%, but maybe some other inks, like just Chinese ink. And
Wow.
that one was made specially for the officiel. And it was in the art special, like there was like inside of the magazine, there were like 14 pages with my drawings. And there was like Cartier, Chanel, Hermes, well, plenty. And then in the end, they did a pop-up exhibition in Amsterdam, and they were like, I had to make them really big sheets and I had to film them. So then I taped my iPhone on the ceiling of my atelier, and I had to put the button, and then I filmed it because they also were showing that on their internet. And then I was drawing, and so I could not stop. So I had to go on and make not one mistake. And I was like, oh my God, it's not going to work. But finally, all the drawings went well from A to Z, because I was not allowed to make a mistake. I was like putting all my paintings, I've decided everything before starting. And being so disciplined made it that it went all right. So that's really something I started to do from then, because I learned really, like, you have to decide everything before you start. Sometimes it's good that an accident is happening, of course, but it's good when you have it like from A to B worked out in your head before you're starting. Yeah. Or sometimes I do also line drawings, and then I just experiment. But in these drawings, I prefer working this way.
I guess what you were saying earlier is when you're on the spot, you become really creative, and you use your knowledge, like you were saying, negative and positive space, ripping materials, this sort of Matisse-like way of thinking, immediate, fast, and on the spot. And you're almost using all of your encyclopedic knowledge to put on the paper and go, right, there's this artist, there's this, I can use this. And you're kind of putting it all together all in seconds to then make a decision because your pen broke, or this didn't work, or the ink fell on the floor. And then you say, oh, that's quite a good splash, I'll use that. So all these sort of mistakes or happenings or moments, you build up a vocabulary of, that was good, let me redo that, I learned from this. And I think, you know, what you were saying earlier, it's that moment, it's that immediate thinking is what a lot of illustrators are used to, because they work quite fast, they work quite rapid. And I think that, you know, being quite creative, and you know, when we speak to Jess, because I know she uses lots of these sort of different tactics and movements and ways of working. So anyway, I must keep moving forwards, but Margot, super, it was great to hear what you had to say. So next is Jess. Jessica, I've seen her work, I guess similar is, you know, when you starting to do a bit of research online, and I guess not focusing on yourself as much, because a lot of illustrators, we need to survive. So you're kind of focusing on yourself, where I had a bit of a reflexive period where I looked out and then I saw all these illustrators, and, you know, I came across Jess. And I think what's interesting about Jessica, and I left her little like written piece there as well, because if anyone, and I think most people do follow you, is they'll see this sort of holistic side to your practice as well as your drawing practice, and they kind of feed each other. And, you know, we did a Q&A, and it's almost like a maternal artist. You know, you talk about your mom, and you talk about you know, this sort of passing down of knowledge, and it's almost like something that's coming from right inside you, like a tree coming out, and the drawings are a reflection of you. And it's almost like a Rothko, but through illustration. So it's quite interesting to sort of hear how all these artists get to who they are. I know people might not be able to read that, but if you can zoom in.
I can read it if you want.
Well, there might be some little bits in there that you can pick out, and why you picked the little written piece, because I thought it was fascinating.
Well, it's a quote by Ira Glass, and it basically talks about how, like, when you first start creating, you're going to compare like your first drafts or your crappy sketches to, you know, your masters, your idols, and you're going to get caught up in kind of that thinking that, you know, I'm never going to be this good, because we're all perfectionists and we're all self-critical of our work, especially when you're sitting down and you're creating something and you're questioning every stroke and every line. And I think because I have an audience that is, you know, pretty like afraid to create, you know, I'm trying to be that voice for them that's telling them to create. But going back to that quote, he basically just talks about how you have to make a lot of crap, and the volume of work that you create, eventually your taste level will catch up the more that you work through, you know, just by basically creating every day. And I think that's why I share so much of the process, is that, like, I want people to see that I make things all the time that I'm like, I don't know if I like this, or I'm trying something new, and kind of being very open about the process, because I want people to create, because I know how much it's changed my life and has given me so much. And I think that everyone deserves that feeling of creating something that surprises them, and that they feel like this rush of confidence, or they've made something beautiful, or they've made something that reflects what they're going through, or it's helping them heal. And especially when COVID started, I don't know about everybody else here, but all I could think was, like, there couldn't be a better time to be an artist, because we will be able to create from home like we always do. Because I feel like, and I think it's really great to be talking and listening to other illustrators, because I feel like there's not a lot of forums to do that. And I feel like illustrators, we live on little islands, and we're kind of isolated anyways, and we have to draw upon our emotions to create. But I think going into COVID, I was like, I think this will be a great time to help other people learn to be creative from home, and channel their emotions into their work. And that was really exciting, and it felt really good that I could help other people, because that is, like, I think one of my biggest things in life is to help other people be creative.
And because I know when I interviewed you and I spoke to you, and I read, and then I read this, and then, you know, looking at how you work and your whole philosophy on what you do, it really, and I think because a lot of illustrators have contacted me or spoke to me, especially, you know, it's Mental Health Week, and a lot of them are isolated, like you said, in these islands, and we all feel we can't make mistakes. So a lot of it's quite nice, because probably a little bit like you, I just post what I'm doing or not doing, or if it's crap or if it's good, and I don't edit a lot, because I feel like Instagram to me should be more of a playground rather than this sort of very orderly finished piece. And for me, it just feels very boring just to put beautiful paintings, highly curated, and it just isn't me. And I think for you, similar, there's this honesty, and I think people really appreciate from what you're doing, and also the way you talk about it. And I know Connie's been doing the same recently, is saying, you know, I'm stuck at the moment, how is anyone else, and trying to open a sort of debate. So I guess from that side of it, going back to your work, is we have this sort of array of images, and I think it would be not, and the titling was quite interesting as well, because I used the word like you're a tree, and we've got this sort of bleeding tree. I didn't mean to have a connection, but it just happens to have a connection. But this sort of vein in your vein, it's like deep. I think art is deep.
No, it's I've used a lot of symbolism with nature in my work. And when I first started creating the black and white stuff with the trees, I was getting ready to get out of a 10-year relationship. And it was like dead to me. But on the outside, I had to be like always put together because that's what women do. So when I put those trees in, that was like the last part of the painting. And, you know, of course, now I've had time since then, but it's like I can look at that painting and I was like, I was dead on the inside. But at the time, I didn't tell anybody what was going on. I was very closed off and I felt a lot of shame. But I finally was sharing these pieces, and I had people who didn't know what was going on at all in my life. And they were just like, wow, these are beautiful, but like, what's going on? You know? And so there was a lot of that type of work. And then that's where I got a lot of like illustration jobs. So what was interesting was I was getting hired for work that I made because I was sad. So, or I was going through a divorce, or I had a miscarriage. I had very emotional things that happened that somehow I'd always injected into. Even if I was just doing fashion illustration, I was somehow putting myself in, or maybe they end up looking a little bit like me, or and so it's interesting to look back on that work and have healed from all of that and grown as an artist. And then using color and honestly just trying to evolve and know that I can create in any state or mood or whatever I'm going through in my life. I don't want to feel like I have to always be sad in order to create something great. And you know, because I think we romanticize this notion of artists who are successful because they were crazy or suicidal, or, you know, they were alcoholics or whatever, when I'm trying to make my art so that I don't become like, you know, a person who can't get out of bed in the morning or has to drink. I want my art to be that thing that gets me through those times. And then now, you know, fast forward, you know, a lot of the work has been about color. It's been about healing because I've gone through a lot of medical trauma in the last 4 years. So it's nice to be able to look back and say, okay, wow, you know, I've done a lot of different things, but that's because I'm being true to where I was at in my life. And so that's kind of like the gist of it. And yeah, trees, I love trees because my father was a landscape like architect, and he had a bunch of books about trees, and he would always like doodle trees for me. And I think it's just me like paying like homage to my father and his, maybe I'm always seeking approval from my father too. So that's another thing where I'm always like, have I done something that will make you proud of me? Because my father doesn't really say that much. So, I mean, I could go off on a bunch of different tangents, but my love of nature and landscaping comes from my father, and my love of fashion comes from my mother because she's a seamstress.
And I guess, because the thing is, your story will resonate to, I guess, some artists who probably at present tonight and who have followed your journey and they understand you. And I think it's really nice that, like a singer, you know, you're putting your personal life into your practice, and it then fuels it and creates this sort of almost magical piece, and where it does create an emotional experience. That's why I said it's like a Rothko. A Rothko's work was there to create this emotion. And I think when we look at your work, you know, you can see that if there's sadness or if there's hope or whatever feeling there is. And then if anyone does look at your Instagrams or follow you, they'll see there is moments where you kind of put it to the side. You say, okay, emotional days off from art, and I'm just going to get creative and have fun like a child. And I think where there's cutouts and you're moving stuff around and puzzling things around. And I find that quite refreshing. And I think what people need to kind of take from you, especially, is this ability just to go for it. And I posted up recently a talk by Johnny Ive, and he was talking to Cal Arts or someone like that. And he was talking about, as you become more creative and you kind of lose that inner child, as they would say, but it's finding the ability to just say, that's why I do it. That's why I'm here, because it is inside me and I want to, and it's the ideas and the playfulness and the creativity, and then the taste, which is, you know, it says in your little written piece, which is, you know, if you've got the taste, it doesn't matter, the good stuff will come. And I think that's what's quite fascinating in that written piece. So it was, you know, it's great to see your work, and we're lucky to kind of speak to you as well. And I think, you know, all the illustrators, no matter whether they've come from a color chemistry world or they've had a sort of romantic history and this sort of experience, everyone has their own little journeys. And I think you know, for you, a lot of people will sort of attach to you, and I think that's why I think that's why you've got quite a big audience, because people really connect. I think that's what's great for you. I guess you probably get loads of feedback. You're probably inundated with helplines.
I do. I think I attract people who, I'm very empathetic. So I've had to learn how to like not absorb everything, but I do attract a lot of people who are seeking help, seeking guidance, and they need that push, or they need somebody to tell them it's okay, you're allowed to create. Because honestly, I didn't hear that growing up. So I want to be that for other people, you know, ultimately.
And I guess that's rare, because a lot of illustrators, you don't think, as I've not heard many speak like you. I hope, you know, they draw and they make stuff and they work commercially, and they're like, I just need to pay bills, or I need to just make money from this, or I have to teach more, or whatever. Where you're like, no, my actual soul is in this, and it's going to go along this pathway. And I think, you know, it's sort of this truism, and I think and this purist attitude to illustration, which you very rarely hear it in illustrators, because most of them are like, when do I get commission? Does my agent take this? I hate everybody. I just want more money. They didn't pay me. I got a killer fee. So they're talking about the work side of illustration, rather than this very sort of artistic practice. You know, you're talking about alcoholic or whatever, but you're in it deep. And I think that's rare, and you can probably see why so many people link to you. And I hope they don't bombard you with, because, you know,
No, they lift me up. They definitely, it's like, if you put out into the world, you're always going to get 3 times back, you know, kind of that thing. So I get a lot of love and support, especially like when I was in the hospital like twice, and I was always like, I don't know why, but I feel like I need, like, I know I'm like really sick, but I feel like I need to like tell people what's going on. And they like, honestly, like, I've never felt like that type of support. And it really did help me through times when I was like, I don't even know if I'm going to make it, you know? And so it's kind of incredible. And I realized that like, it's a resource that's hard to give, because I'm friends and I know so many artists, and a lot of artists are very introverted people, and or they get exhausted quite easily, because artists do tend to be more empathetic. You give so much to your work that you don't always have room left over to give to other people. And you can also have people who might want to just take from you. So if you feel like you're being taken from, or you're taken advantage of, which is very easy as an artist to feel that way, it makes it harder to want to give back. So I think I definitely have like a purpose where I'm very dedicated to, like, I'm here to help other people, and you know, be a Bob Ross, be a Frida Kahlo, be all those people that I love. And then I'm just here. This is the life I was given, and this is the shell that I have, and this is the soul that I have. And I'm gonna use it to the best of my ability, because I've definitely had times in my life when I wasn't creating, and I wasn't sharing, and I wasn't open. So I want to live the way I think I'm supposed to.
No, brilliant. Thank you, Jess. So I'm conscious of time, because I can see we're flying along. So next in the list, we have the lovely Connie Lim. Hopefully we can hear you, Connie.
I'm here.
Good. And well, I guess for Connie's probably like myself been for a huge journey of drawing, lecturing, tutoring, drawing again, resurrecting, being crucified, starting again, and I guess it's you're sort of just looking at what you've done and how you work, and this sort of resilience. It's resilience, if I have to describe, even though there is a practice of what you do and a bit of bravery, like when you do your cutouts and you're cutting out the figures, because sometimes there's like moments where I'm like, wow, that's quite a brave move. And it doesn't always work, and sometimes it does. And I find that's quite a nice thing, that you're kind of on the edge of potentially something really good. And I think that's what's fascinating to me, is that you're always like, I'm gonna try this and I'm gonna do that and I'm gonna stick this up and it's gonna I'm gonna photograph that there and I'm gonna cut it out. And I find that I don't know, there's sort of an animation side to when I look at you and cutting out arms, and it's sort of this old school. And I just, and then there's the other side, which is the life drawing and this sort of heavy, because I remember the night I met you at the awards and you were like, oh, you need to go to Draw Cabaret and you need to experience the couture night. And I was just starting this and I was like, look, I've been in it, but what I felt, probably similar to Jess, is this insular experience of illustrators all on their own. No one's communicating what is going on, and everyone I talk to is struggling and not enjoying it. And I thought, this has got to stop. We've got to come together, unified. And also I saw the distance between fashion illustrators and illustrators, and people might disagree with me, but I can't see them. Fashion illustrators really look at the sort of artisan art world, and they kind of shift from fashion illustrators to maybe art, where illustrators might be book illustrators, and they have, and sort of commercial, and they have that, or storyboards or whatever they do. But I find the fashion illustrators are the ones that are moving between being an artist and a sort of illustrator. So when I spoke to Richard Haynes, we spoke about, is it a fashion artist? Like with, the word, because illustrator, we never know if it's the right word. So I guess with the images that you sent me and the reference, we can see probably Max is probably similar likings to these as well. So what would be good from you, Connie, is your referencing of who you've selected. And I tried to jewel them up into groups because it looked like you'd sort of sent them to me like that. So let's speak about your references, and then maybe the connectivity between your reference to your work, which could be quite good.
I mean, it was so nice because, of course, Patrick, you putting Fida together, and it's so nice to hear from all the artists, because listening to their stories, I really resonated with all of them. Like, I can feel those personal struggles. Like, for example, with Max, I come from an illustration university in California. So I did the traditional life drawing. I was going to be a character artist as well for video games. And then I realized I couldn't draw tanks and guns in 3D perspective. Just wasn't my thing. And we had to take a fashion illustration class, and I just fell in love with it. And my tutor always said that I can draw things prettier than they were, or like in a different way. So I started that way, and in my university, we had to do life drawing all the time. And then I realized, like, I love life drawing when I'm life drawing, because you only have like 5 minutes, 10 minutes to capture that pose. It's just you and the model. So I feel like it's the most honest thing that you can do. It's the most honest of yourself without the ego. So there's no time for the ego. You have to just pull on through in the time frame. So I think I chose these artists because they've been life drawing. So you can see the actual photo and how they took that essence and they turned it into an illustration. And, I picked that, what is it called? That quote by Picasso, learning the rules like a pro so you can break them like an artist. So I always felt like I'm in the process of learning the rules. Like I really want to do that, like Max said, hyper realization. I feel like I'm not there yet. I'm still in the process of learning all the rules. But I think life drawing was great because not only do you get to draw, but you have a community with you. You have people who draw at the same time. And then you look at your drawings and it's just like celebrating everybody's individuality and things like that. So yeah, you can see there's like two sides of me that I'm still trying to connect. And like you said earlier, it's like a struggle for me. I'm just trying to connect things together and fighting with myself. And how can I take my fashion life drawing and then turn them into my real drawings, like my commercial drawings, because I too tend to get a bit control freak when I'm drawing my own illustrations. So I think it's nice for me to do life drawing, so I get pulled back a bit. Yeah, you can tell there's an inner struggle. It's like a confidence.
Well, I think what I liked is the sort of the referencing from Klim and Egon Schiele and all these artists, and I, you know, when I see your work, and then you kind of, I always think about the eyes. When anyone draws the eyes, there's a real, and you've got these really sort of really small, almost slightly gazing eyes, less Disney, the opposite of Disney, where they're really big. Yours are like really minute, almost like a really murderous gaze. Maybe that's from the baddies in Marvels or something like that. I find that quite like,
do you know what it is? So I think that's because I have like growing up in the US and I'm an Asian person. Everybody associates me with like anime if I draw something very like an anime cartoon. So I always try to go against the stereotype. Right. So I think that's kind of where that came from. It's like, I'm gonna draw the smallest eyes.
Because I always thought her eyes are always really like semi-closed, as if they're just, you know, like when you say to a model, just open your mouth and breathe a little bit, just for a photograph. You have that with the eyes, and I'm really like they're giving you the killer stare. And I was like, so that is sort of the signature thing that I always spot with your work. And then there's this sort of like almost a journey that you've been going through, and you know, new work that you've been producing with these sort of floral bits and the tiger, and I don't know, there's been a real sort of playfulness, and then kind of coming back and then trying to add in more, because I was reading about a lot of artists is laboring over your work, and that's what you've been doing recently, is you've been more labor intensive, is rather than the speedy things where you might do in a life drawing, you've like, it looks like you're spending days over your work just to get them finer details. And I think, you know, that's the realism side, but it doesn't need to be real. It just needs to go where you're I think that's what I'm seeing of recent looking at your work.
Yeah, and I think because I'm doing a lot of teaching as well, so I had to create the curriculum for the students for all the school years. So I teach in fashion design, the students, the illustration bit, and from like how to draw the body and then how to be experimental, how to draw garments. And that really pushed me to experiment more. And that's where the collage came from, because I had to teach final years how to do collage and really express themselves more away from the technical bit. And I think it's nice because it feeds into my work as well. So I was like, oh, this is fun. I'm gonna explore collage. So I feel always like I'm a student, and I'll be a student forever until I'm old, because I'm always wanting to learn new things. So each year I try to learn new things and then add them into my work. And I think that's why I resonate with Picasso so much, is because he had these periods of his work shifting and changing. And I think right now the struggle for artists, I think, is to have your own brand in a way. But for me, it's a bit confusing because, you know, on Instagram, you have to have like a nice similar images, and that's the brand. But as an artist, you're always changing, and like Jessica said, we all don't feel, happy all the time. We don't all feel the same way. And I feel like if I'm creating the same art for 10 years, like, where am I going? How am I going to evolve? How am I going to grow as a person? Because, life does happen in whatever circumstances you're going through. Your artwork is the reflection of that. You're like, these days, I'm really not motivated somehow, but I know when I am motivated, it'll come back again. But, the Instagram or the social media is a reflection of that. So it's kind of difficult, I think, nowadays, rather than before the social media things happened. I think it has a positive and a negative.
Yeah, I do think people like the word brand. I hate the word brand. And I think it's a sort of become a negative thing where illustrators are brand. We're not brands. And, when we think of Damien Hirst and people like that, Jeff Koons wanting to have this sort of brand. And is it a style? And then you get sort of pigeonholed for a style. And now everybody's like, right, I want that style. And then like, I remember getting work and they'd looked at work that I did as a student, and I'd been illustrating for like 6-7 years, and I totally had changed, and it was a job for Selfridges, and they were like, oh, but we want this. And I was like, that was 6 years ago. I don't do that. That was like screen printing stuff. And I totally had changed, but it was a big job. So I had to kind of say, well, can we kind of manipulate it a little bit? So it was quite an interesting time. And people see work, you'd be surprised. Once you've got a sort of history of work, people see work that could be 10, 15 years ago. I like that. And also if you have an agent, which we've mentioned, if you have an agent's like, don't go too mad. This is uncommercial. Stay in line. And you're like, no, I'm an artist. And you are a bit crazy sometimes. Like, I want to use a brush, and then I want to use VR, or I want to do this. And I guess that's and it's fascinating with what you're doing, because you're constantly, but all of you, I think everybody here is drawing on different paper, using different techniques, using impasto, using watercolors, using anything goes. And every illustrator I've had in here has been just this mad. I don't know if it's fashion illustrators, because they tend to be, fashion is fast, and fashion illustrators constantly is fast, where maybe an illustrator like Quentin Blake, who's drawn books,
lovely.
That style's been like that since I was a kid, and he seems to just bang it, do it all the time. I don't know how he does it, even though he does other sort of drawings. His drawings still are that style. For you know, it's fascinating to kind of watch where you're going. And I know, because you're involved with loads of stuff, and I'm watching you, and it's like right now she's doing a book on fashion figures, and she's working for fashion schools, writing a curriculum, and she's an academic. I feel your journey, which has been
survive.
you've got to survive, and I know that. And with your studio, with drawings everywhere, it's like Richard Haynes as well. It's just like thousands of drawings. I think you've probably run out of 15 studio spaces of drawing.
I just wish I can just draw all day, to be honest. I don't want to do anything else. I just want to. But as an artist, especially nowadays, you have to keep the social media up. You have to be in the industry. You have to find a stable income. Like, all those things resonate. And when you're not feeling up to it as an artist, you don't feel like drawing. And there's just a lot of like roller coasters and bumps and hills. But to be honest, I think that's what makes it really exciting, because all of my friends here in LA, they work in the entertainment industry. So they work for like Netflix or Pixar. And they all envy my life, because even though it's a struggle, like, I'm happy doing what I'm doing. I love drawing, and I can draw whatever I want. Whereas a lot of people don't have that choice. Like, they have to work for a company, so their creativity goes to the company. And when they get home, they just don't have the energy to kind of express themselves in a way. So I think we are really lucky to do what we get to do in a way, because not so many people have, I guess, not so bold to do that, to have this kind of lifestyle.
it's bold. And I think everybody here listening to all of them is a bold, it's a bold decision to be a fashion artist, illustrator.
Definitely.
Especially financial, because
Yeah.
it can be fantastic and then it can be horrendous. So
Yeah.
I guess let me have a quick look at questions. So if anybody's got any questions, you can fire them down in our chat room. We've got like a little chat here. I can just see Massimo was going to speak about we're doing a show in Miami, but he's a lecturer and he's had to go back. So he said he's loved us and left us. But if anybody's got any questions, I think we probably answered 1,000 questions. I can't think of anything else, but you know, and I tried to stick to an hour, so I don't know how. We've gone 7 minutes over, so we've done pretty good, and everybody's kind of managed to get a good bit of speaking out and have a good sort of get their voice over. And if anybody has questions, so what we did before is I might post an image up and then tag it. And if anyone has questions, it worked quite nicely. So tomorrow I'll post something online. And if anyone wants to put any questions, because we're all on the spot, just put it into the Instagram chat. And I'm sure the artists will respond to you. And if you have any questions or feedback, or you want to learn something or know anything, what was someone was sending me a question, but they were, I guess we've more or less answered it. And I know some of the artists want to talk about process, but process is another big debate, and documenting your work. Because I know Connie's got sort of soft boxes and there's lots of high-tech equipment. And I don't know how, just quickly with Max and Jess and Margot, how you document your work. So Jess, how do you photograph it? How do you capture it? We'll do it quick. We'll be quite quick.
I do photograph my work. I just use my iPhone. I scan things, and then I just recently got like this little thing on Amazon to like hold the. I feel like it took forever, but I found for $25. It's in my highlights under painting supplies. If you want the link for that, it's great. It holds your phone and it lights up, so it's perfect for like filming and photographing, especially because the light changes in here all the time. So.
Yeah. And Margot, how do you capture your work?
Well, I use all kind of swipes and bits, and I have sketchbooks, and I draw all the time in them, and I also take pictures of everything that I see, people I see in the street, or I always am watching everywhere.
And scanning? Do you scan any of your work with a scanner, or mainly photograph?
After making it, you mean? Yeah, I always scan it. Yes, my work is always like, it can be framed, so I never retouch. I do retouch just to get out of the dust, but every work is ready to be exposed in the exhibition and to be sold. So it's like I have to scan it. Yes, I'm scanning it, and then sorry, I didn't get the question.
And Max, about your work, is it photographed or is it scanned?
Oh no, I always scan it.
You always scan it. Yeah, because that was a big question that people.
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
I've been speaking to the artists because I'm sent in some really bad images who they've photographed them with an iPhone 2 or something like that, and the light is terrible and it's all grainy, and with regards to sort of professionalism, you can buy good lighting. If you worry about light, wait for about 12 or 1 o'clock in the day, and the light is directly above. If you get no shadows, you can get really good light, and natural light is always the best. And that was a big question about capturing work. A good camera, you can buy quite a good camera with good resolution, but iPhone is good for online. If you're posting anything on social media. Let's have a look. Oh my God, Jess just shared. Right. Okay, so people are thanking us for the answers. So rather than keep talking, thank you. I know everybody, some people want lunch, some people want dinner, and some people want to put the kids to bed, me. Reality. So thank you for everybody. Thank you for the team, Connie, Jess, Margot, Max. It was a pleasure. it was it felt sort of quick, I hope, or it didn't go too long. And it was a pleasure. And hopefully, you know, we'll get more of this and we'll meet up maybe one day face to face. You never know. But thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. And
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.
Bye bye.